Hey friends, powwow guy Rob Phoenix here. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what a Hexenmeister is. If you're new to the study of Pennsylvania German folk magic, you'll probably come across that term, Hexenmeister, and it can be a little confusing for some people. So, a good way to look at it. Another powwower that I know who's part of the Phoenix line. His name's Jason. He kind of explained it really well once in a discussion we had online, but basically the gist of it is Pennsylvania German folk magic is like a spectrum. On the far left side of it, if you will, you have just the people throughout history who may have, known one or two sort of healing remedies that were considered to be powwow remedies. They didn't consider themselves to be a powwow, but they knew a couple of powwow things. It'd be like, your grandmother could blow out burns, or, your uncle could get rid of warts. It's just part of what they did. They didn't really talk about it. That was probably the most common manifestation of Pennsylvania German folk magic in Pennsylvania. And actually, I wrote this down because I want to share this with you guys. Somebody shared it with me. This dissertation that was written in 1982. It was called Powwowing in Union County by Barbara Louise Ryman Snyder. So she wrote her dissertation on powwowing in Union County, Pennsylvania. And I think a majority of the people she interviewed for it and spoke with just said it's just what they did. They didn't talk about it. They didn't have conversations about it. It was the powwowing things they did to them were just a part of what they did. It was just if you have a fever, you take this medicine. If you have a sore throat, you drink this. If you have a burn, you blow out the burn. It was just part of their first aid, I guess. Wasn't a big deal. But then, moving a little further along that spectrum, you had what was more like the more professionalized version of that, like the powwower or the braucher, who would identify as that. And that's someone who was known to be a powwower, and you might take a family member or a sick child there, or call them to come and visit you. If you or your family member were sick, or if you were having a problem with one of your animals, or even, sometimes they would come and fix your farm equipment. That wasn't unheard of, just because they knew how. So then there's that. And then a little further to the right on that, you get what's called the Hexenmeister. The Hexenmeister is basically a braucher or a powwower who has taken their practice a step further and will work to negate the effects of negative witchcraft. Because a lot of people believed back in the day that some of their illnesses and misfortunes and such were caused by witches, or devils and demons and such. And so the Hexenmeister was there to ritualistically work against that. And then all the way to the right of the Pennsylvania German folk magic spectrum is the Hexen. They were the witches that would work ritualistic magic to cause harm. So anyway, that's the belief about Pennsylvania German folk magic. As with anything else, there's always a gray area and a blurry area. And honestly, I believe that nowadays people are more likely to be threatened by witchcraft than back in the day. I think back in the day, a lot of it was they just didn't know. They didn't understand things. I'm sure certainly there were actual hexen by the definition of hexen. But I think nowadays, in modern times, that's more likely to occur. Just because, with modern witchcraft being what it is, and it's so widespread, there are people that are going to pick that up with their own agenda and maybe with malevolent intent or whatever. Certainly the information's out there, how to do curses and such, so it's out there. I think it's just, nowadays it's more common than it was back in the day. So the role of a Hexenmeister is basically a powwow or a broker who has been educated in modern witchcraft and has also been educated in ways to negate or combat that. I would say that's not an easy thing, though, because I think, and I say this from experience, like more people come to me anyway. I'm not sure how it is for other powwowers out there, but more people come to me thinking they might have a curse on them, or there might be a curse on their family or something. And a lot of times you think, I can probably explain that away to them. But, you can only counsel people so much. But then really the bottom line is if they indicate that they've run across an individual who, self-identifies as a witch or somebody, the bottom line is we don't know. We don't know if they're really has something on them or if they're just believe they do or if they're looking for an excuse or something, because you're going to meet all kinds of people. But the fact is there are people out there who self-identify as witches. Most of them I met are just fine. They're just regular people, not very dissimilar to powwow. A lot of neo-paganism, though, and but it is what it is. But of course, as with anything, you're going to have people who don't always have your best intentions, or don't have always the best intentions to help you or whatever. So anyway, Hexenmeister work it's largely listening to people, helping them, kind of talk through things. If they come at you with a list of like, well, this, and this are happening to me, okay, let's take a look at each one of those individual things. And maybe we can find a sort of a mundane, I guess the word is mundane, cause for that. Or maybe you could do something differently in life to not have that happen again. So you can kind of talk through people a lot of things. Sometimes it's easy to counsel with people, but sometimes it's not. And I am not a trained therapist. I'm an accountant. And believe it or not, a lot of people's problems are financial. But again, there's only so far I can go with talking about mundane things with people before I decide I'm going to help them in some way, shape, or form. And it will either work or it will not, because it's up to God. It's not up to me. So Hexenmeister work can be very tricky because you don't know when you should take action or what kind of action to take sometimes. So it can be tricky. It's nice to have other people to sort of collaborate with and discuss it. There's also an element of what I recently learned is called deliverance ministry. There's definitely some element of that in Hexenmeister work. Deliverance ministry is a branch of Christianity that empowers believers to negate negative spirits, demonic influences, witchcraft, and that sort of thing. And I was lucky enough to come across a local pastor who's willing to teach this. So I'm excited to start that training. We'll see how it goes, but that's a part of Hexenmeister work. So just by calling yourself a Hexenmeister doesn't really make you one. I've called myself a Hexenmeister, but I also realize there's a lot that I don't know. So there's no guide telling us, like, to be a Hexenmeister, you must know this, and this, There's no, like, historical guide for that, so we just do the best we can. But one of the things, if you're interested in this kind of type of Pennsylvania German folk magic, I would say you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be able to say, I don't know how to handle this situation. Don't be afraid to refer clients, because I've done that a million times. If people have come to me with questions and such, I'm not going to pretend I know how to do something if I don't. So that's why it's nice to have a network out there of people to contact, because you're not always going to be the right choice for them. So if you do the best you can. You talk to people, you counsel people and such. So that's really like the biggest job of a Hexenmeister. And then if you feel like there's something you can do to help the individual, then you do it. Now remember, we're not trying to just do something to make them feel better. We're not trying to give them a placebo effect. If we truly see that there is something there, which is not easy, it's tricky to do, then we do the real work. If we don't see anything, or if we don't see that we can help this individual, then we have to be honest with them, all right? And maybe refer them to somebody else, okay? So it's good to have a nice network built up of various folk magic practitioners, because if they come to you and their faith is something totally different than yours, and they have questions about things that are just so outside the realm of your Christian belief system, your Christian beliefs, your religion and such, find somebody else to refer them to. I've already referred people to local covens or, heathen groups or whatever, because it seemed like that's where their interests were. That's where the potential client, that's where their beliefs were. I could not be the person they needed. So paranormal investigators, if you kind of make a list of those, so you have people to refer to. But yeah, that's really important too. So a Hexenmeister is kind of like a referral system. It's kind of like a counseling system. And then there's some ritualized ceremonial magic that you can do to help your clients and such. So that's just kind of a basic overview. I know I was kind of vague on a lot of points here, but yeah. So just remember that if that's the kind of work you're interested in, just remember that it's really, really pretty rare, I think, I've found, to see actual curses, to see actual effective curses. But I do think they're more common now than they would have been back in the day. So, that's what I got. So, yeah, Hexenmeister, it's very interesting, but it's the reality is not as interesting as the the description or the fantasy about it. Hexenmeister translates kind of like a sorcerer or a master of witches or a witch master. It's somebody who has mastery over the power of the witch. And that's a pretty lofty title. So I would imagine you just have to know so much in order to really, truly, truly have the confidence to be a Hexenmeister. Certainly, most of us powwowers have delved into that area of work when people have come to us and we were able to help, but we're not always going to be the right choice for all people. So anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. You can find out a lot about, Patrick Dunmoyer writes a lot about hexerai and, witchcraft, negative witchery, and whatever, in his book, Powwowing in Pennsylvania. And then this is a really good one too, the Witch of the Monongahela. This is a Western Pennsylvania look at Pennsylvania German folklore. And Thomas White, he's a professor at Duquesne University. He talks about those different, like the regular person versus the professional powwow versus the Hexenmeister versus the Hexen. He talks a lot about that. It's really interesting. And then this is sort of an older one, but The Red Church by Chris Bellardi, he talks about those things as well. He identifies them as the degrees of power. I would say I don't disagree with anything he's saying there. But nothing's as cut and dry, black and white as we'd like to believe it is. So anyway, that's my talk about the Hexenmeister and a little bit about the other things. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great night.